Hi, welcome, Francesca.
Hi, dear Kala.
Hi.
Very nice to meet you. Hi.
Same here. So, hope you're ready. So, shall we begin?
Of course.
Thank you. Um, I have my head of the department, Dr.A.Roselin here. Miss Roselin, ma'am. Hi.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening,
Francesca.
Roselin. So nice meeting you.
Yeah, pleasure is ours.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
So, shall we begin now? Smriti, over to you, Smriti, for the MC.
Yes. It is a breezy evening for all of us and a pleasant morning to our guest. On behalf of the Research Center of English, Fatima College, we welcome you to the Tete a Tete with Francesca Ferrando, the PostHuman philosopher. Let us begin this occasion with a prayer song.
Smriti.
Now, I welcome Dr.A.Roselin Mary, Associate Professor and Head, the Research Center of English, Fatima College, to welcome the virtual gathering. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Smriti. For wisdom is a breath of power of God, and a pure emanation of the glory of the Almighty. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7, scripture 25. I bow in gratitude to the ever-loving God who hovers over us and protects us. It is He who gives us the wisdom to channelize our energy and efforts in molding the youth of Maryland. Respected Dr. Francesca Ferrando, distinguished faculty from city colleges, scholars with an insatiable thirst to explore new avenues in the field of knowledge, ladies and gentlemen, wish you all a pleasant evening. I deem it a great pleasure to welcome today's speaker, who is an erudite scholar, unswerving researcher, and an illustrious academician. I am delighted to extend my warm welcome to Dr. Francesca Ferrando. Her remarkable contribution to the growing field of post-humanist literature, transhumanism, and cyborgs, future studies, etc., is commendable. The Research Center of English is delighted to have such an exciting and an inspiring personality amidst us. It is the first time we meet a theorist in this series in Annals of the Department History. It is a great moment for us, madam. I wholeheartedly welcome you. We are eagerly waiting to listen to your deliberations. A warm welcome to Dr. Joe Bartholomew. I am delighted to welcome the teaching fraternity and the research scholars and the students from various institutions. I take this opportunity to record my deep sense of appreciation to Dr.S.J.Kala, Associate Professor, Research Center of English, for a rich contribution to research. She is ever willing to walk an extra mile to share the knowledge and provide a rich experience like this. So, again, I'm very happy this evening, delighted to welcome you all to this gathering. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, I request Dr. S.J.Kala, Associate Professor, Research Guide and Supervisor, Dean of Academic Affairs, Fatima College, Madurai, to introduce the writer to us. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Smriti, and thank you, Dr.A.Roselin, for those warm words of welcome. Now, here I am to introduce the speaker to you all today. Knowledge is having the right answer. Intelligence is asking the right question, goes a popular adage. Today is one such day when we have gathered here to know about post-humanism from the most knowledgeable person who has the most right answer to it. As we have all virtually gathered from different parts of the globe to get the newer research insights on post-humanism, I feel too elated to introduce Dr. Francesca Ferrando, the post-human philosopher, who's to share with us her expertise on post-human reality. Dr. Francesca Ferrando is a distinguished academician and a researcher par excellence who keeps inspiring hordes of people with her multifarious roles and well-deserved laurels earned for her amazing achievements. Dr. Francesca Ferrando, a renowned post-human philosopher, noted avant-garde performer, an active blogger, an adjunct professor, is an enthralling musician too, all rolled into one. As we scroll down her biography, we get to know that she has completed post-graduation in gender studies at the University of Utrecht and doctorate of philosophy at the University of Romatra. Presently, she teaches liberal arts in the New York University, USA. This exemplary speaker is also a highly acclaimed writer. Albert Georgi's saying, research is to see what everybody else has seen and think who nobody else has thought, and these words best suits Francesca, who has unearthed the hidden treasures from the less trodden paths of post-humanism. This avid researcher has published extensively on the less discussed topics of post-humanism and transhumanism as well as cyborg. Her book, Philosophical Posthumanism, published in the year 2019, has bagged a lot of praises and prizes. Recognizing her contributions towards posthumanism, she has been duly awarded with the much enviable philosophical prize Vittorio Santi, along with an acknowledgement from the President of Italy, Giorgio Napolitano, in 2014. Her exclusive and unique research in posthumanism has fetched her prestigious titles, such as the title of Honorary Fellow of the Department of Humanities by the University of Naples in 2004. Besides these, she is also being named as one of the 100 top creators for making changes in the world by the US magazine Origin in 2015, and was identified as one of the top speakers by the global agency Mindshare in the journey of posthuman in 2017. Upholding firmly the principle, knowledge is infinite, she moves ahead to explore the unexplored. Aligned with the famous saying, actions speak louder than words, she engages in meaningful actions too, besides sharing her thoughts through spoken and written media. The global post-human network that is founded by her with the sole objective of connecting people with post-humanistic concerns bears testimony to how she walks her talk. Undoubtedly, such a person of great profile is a much sought after speaker who has traveled far and wide to deliver insightful lectures. It's to be noted that the TED Talk acknowledges her as the first speaker to speak vibrantly on posthumanism. Her keen interest on the subject, her perseverance, hard work, and authentic research publications have made her one of the greatest proponents of posthumanism. Besides these, her works have been translated into many languages, including Chinese, Korean, Romanian, Russian, Turkish, and Spanish. Above all, she is a simple personality with a gracious demeanor. It is undoubtedly a great opportunity for all the budding researchers, especially in India, to have a speaker, a philosopher, a researcher of such wide experience to share with her thoughts. Because through that, we'll be able to widen our research perspectives by exploring the unexplored through the eminent speaker's engaging talk. I deem it a great privilege to once again welcome the distinguished speaker of the day, Dr. Francesca Ferrando, and all the others gathered here. I take this opportunity to specially mention Mr. Joe Bartholomew's presence here. Thank you for your enthusiasm. Thank you once again to one and all present here.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, I am honored to invite the versatile guest of the day, Dr. Francesca Ferrando, the posthuman philosopher and adjunct professor, New York University, USA. Ma'am, the platform is yours.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank so much Dr.Kala, Roselin, Smiroti, and the Fatima College for engaging in this important conversation. There is no posthumanism without us being in dialogue about it. And there is no posthumanism if posthumanism is not bringing change to our planet. So this is the reason why we are doing posthumanism, is to be in dialogue, thinking together, envisioning together, and manifesting together change and what needs to be manifested right now in the 21st century as a specific, unique spatio-temporal condition for our planet. So we really need to think about it together. So for me, it's a great joy and a great honor to be in this platform, thinking together with all of you. Thank you so much for the invitation. And thank you so much for the beautiful, generous words that you shared with all of us. Thank you. And if you want, we can start our dialogue. We thought that it would be important not to have a monologue, so we are going not into a traditional lecture, but more in a dialogue with Dr. Kala about important topics of the posthuman. So I think we can probably start our dialogue.
So maybe to start with, you can tell us something about what posthumanism is.
That's a very important question. There are many ways to answer to this question. The easy one that I'm not going to embrace, it would be a theoretical switch in academia. And that's where posthumanism on some level has been developed in the last 20 years. So that's a very important switch. And this is why, for me, it's a great honor to be with all of you discussing this at the academic level. But I think that the global 19 pandemic has taught us that posthumanism, just as a theory, is not enough. I think that posthumanism can only be a way of existing. And if we think of posthumanism as a way of existing, I like to define it in three ways. The first one is acknowledging human diversity. So, of course, the point is, when we are existing, why are we here? And one answer that I think all religions and all philosophies and all the great mystics would agree is to understand who we are. Now, if we are trying to understand who we are, we're also realizing that in this dimension, we are embodied, we're part of a species, and this species has been defined as the human. And this human species is varied. There are many of us. Of course, we are connected, we share a lot, we share experiences, we share knowledges, we share DNA, we share viruses. See what's happening now with the COVID-19 pandemic. But we're also different. We're also here with seeing specific aspects of existence that other people are not seeing. This is why it's very important to be connected and sharing. So the first point is acknowledging the beauty of human diversity. So no one human can speak for everyone. And this is unfortunately the history of the human in the last thousands of years with imperialism, colonialism, a lot of histories of discriminations can go under this umbrella, racism, sexism, ethnocentrism, etc., etc. So this has been part of our history, not since the beginning of the humankind, but definitely for some years. And it's important to understand that we don't need that. We don't need to think of us as better than others, because that kind of approach is not helping us navigating existence. The best way to navigate existence, understanding that we are connected to others. We need others to survive on all levels, at all levels, even at the practical level of surviving. So I think that is very important, going above, beyond this notion of the hierarchy of the human that is manifested in different forms, to, again, sexism, also casteism is another example in which, some humans will be better than others. So that's very important to do this work. But of course, some of you can say, well, that's not original of the post-human. It's been done by many other approaches, you name it, post-colonialism, critical race studies, etc., etc. And that's true. So this is just one layer that needs to be acknowledged, but that's not enough. Another layer that I would want to add here is what has been defined as post-anthropocentrism. Now, it is a big word, but it simply means that we don't need, again, to go into a hierarchical approach of the human in relation to other species. And I think that India has been a very interesting place for roots of a post-anthropocentric approach. There are many traditions in India in which the non-human animals are acknowledged as dignified beings. So this is very important because we're also in a specific spatio-temporal condition, which is the Anthropocene. We are seeing the 6th mass extinction. Thousands of species are getting extinct every year because of human action. We are realizing that one of the causes of the pandemic is precisely this disbalance in nature. So it's very important to understand that this approach, in which we thought of the human as the best, the most evolved, the most unique, it does not work anymore for us. It's not helping us. And so a post-anthropocentric approach realizes that we really need to think of coexisting in this planet, not only through human diversity, but also through biological diversity. That's very important. And then we go to the third level, which is what I like to define as post-dualism. Of course, you can relate to many other philosophical approaches that are talking about non-dualism. But it is true that society has been constructed through a lot of dualistic approaches. And so it's very important to know that even if eventually we get to a society in which human diversity is acknowledged and non-human diversity is acknowledged, if we still keep teaching our children a dualistic way of approaching existence, we are going to see other issues. For instance, biocentrism, or for instance, discrimination against super intelligent machines, both ways. So, for instance, super intelligent machines discriminate against humans or humans against machine beings. So I think it's very important to understand that existence does not unfold in dualistic ways. Look at around, everywhere, in nature, in cities, you don't see, there is no way we can understand existence through a clear cut of dichotomic approaches, to a straight dualism. If anything, the rainbow with all the colors and all the variety, and also evolution is constantly diversifying. So there is no way we can think that we can understand who we are through a dualistic approach, especially a rigid one. But in general, I think dualism is not enough. Numbers are infinite. Why we should just stay with two? So that's very important to understand that posthumanism at this point, for me, is not longer just a theory, cannot be just a theory, because theories on its own, they don't help anyone. They just make us feel better, but they don't change anything. So, but again, I don't want to generalize for everyone. I know that some people are okay addressing posthumanism just as a theory, and that's fine as well. But that's not where I am. I'm really, feeling more and more the need of really manifest posthumanism in the way we exist, in our everyday acts, through our food, through the way we interact with technology, etc., etc. So I would say that posthumanism is a way of existing and can be maybe simplified in those three forms, such as post/humanism, which is acknowledging human diversity, post/anthropocentrism, acknowledging non-human diversity, and then post/dualism, which is acknowledging that existence does not unfold in dualistic ways.
So that's so awesome and cool. Can you also highlight the differences between or the similarities between posthumanism and transhumanism?
Of course. Yeah, so when I was saying that posthumanism has been developed in the last at least 20 years, we can go beyond that. We can go definitely from the end of the 70s on. I was referring to the fact that posthumanism is a movement that goes under an umbrella term or let's say a wave, which can be defined as the post-human wave. Now, in this wave, there are many different movements. There is posthumanism, which is not one, but many. There is cultural posthumanism, critical posthumanism, philosophical posthumanism, now existential posthumanism, spiritual posthumanism, and so on. There is also, for instance, transhumanism, as Dr. Kala was rightly mentioning. And also transhumanism is not one, but many. We have libertarian transhumanism, we have democratic transhumanism, we have extropianism, we have the singularity, and so on. We have also, for instance, anti-humanism, which is not one, but many. We have meta-humanism, object-oriented ontology, new materialism, etc., etc. Now, all of these should not in any way scare people. It's like, oh my God, it's too much, especially people who maybe just are starting to join the conversation. You should be very excited about this because it means that it's happening. So if we study something that is done, that is dead, that is from the past and is not alive anymore, it's very easy to identify the specific movement under one name and generalize many different thinkers. And I often bring the example of Renaissance humanism. For instance, in Italy in the 15th century, 16th century, there were many thinkers and they were not agreeing with each other. And the term humanism was created 200 years later by a German scholar to kind of simplify all that was happening at the time. And this, of course, is true for many different traditions. Even Advaita Vedanta, for instance, in India, there are so many different thinkers. There are many examples of this. What I would like to say is that when you think of the term posthuman, you are really referring about a movement that is developing in the end of 20, beginning of 21st century to define what does it mean to be human now in these special temporal conditions through biotechnologies that are emerging through this specific ecological situation. Because it's true that we can find inspiration in many books and many wise people that came from the past. But it's also true that our specific conditions are unique to our species right now. And we need to be brave, and we need to be generous for the people who are going to come after us to understand where we are at, not just as individuals, and not just as societies, but as a species and as a planet. So here I would like to say that there are many, many movements that are happening. All of them are interesting for different reasons. Now, the transhumanist approach is very interesting as well. I think that there are some limits to the transhumanist approach, which is precisely what I was talking about before, which is dualism. Transhumanism kind of relies on dualism, relies on the European Enlightenment, which is also what eventually spread imperialism and colonialism. So rely on principles that have been highly deconstructed from many different viewpoints. Again, post-colonialism, postmodernism, feminism, etc., etc. But there are some very interesting aspects of transhumanism. I think that the most interesting aspect of transhumanism is the way transhumanism really address possible evolutions of the human species through emerging and speculative biotechnologies. So, for instance, going through some ancient myths of the human, like, for instance, radical life extension, a thinking of possibilities where the human can actually live for thousands of years, to the point of maybe having an unlimited lifespan. How? Through, for instance, nanotechnology, re-engineering the human body, etc., etc. Now, of course, there are a lot of ethical issues there and also socio-political issues. So, for instance, if we have a society in which some humans, through emerging and speculative biotechnologies, can live, let's say, even thousands of years or even hundreds of years, let's not even go into the unlimited lifespan. Someone like Aubrey de Grey, he's actually talking about an unlimited lifespan. But let's not even go there. Let's go to hundreds of years. What would that mean when we're talking about classes, when we're talking about jobs, when we're talking about social equity and social justice? For instance, what about the job market? Is someone who's going to live hundreds of years getting the job instead of someone who's going to live only some decades? I mean, these are real issues, real questions that we need to talk about. But it's very interesting that the transhuman movement really go out there with radical imagination. So, for instance, someone like Natasha Vita-More, who is a very interesting philosopher and artist, she is working about with this artwork called Prime PostHuman, in which she's kind of redesigning the human. And so, for instance, she's thinking of a skin that is no longer prone to skin cancer. She's also thinking of a brain where you can download information directly from the internet, etc., etc. So these are very interesting ideas. Of course, again, they cannot just be accepted. They need to be discussed at the species level, because now we are not talking about something that is only going to affect some societies. When we're talking, for instance, about re-engineering the human genome, we are no longer talking about India or America or Italy or Korea or Nigeria. We are going to talk about the species, because someone whose human genome has been modified can travel to another country, have children with someone else, and that is going to be part of the human of a human gene pool. So I'm not here to say that something is wrong or right. I'm here to say that we need to talk about it at the global level. So it's no longer a type of discussion that can be done through nations, through borders, but needs to be talked at the species level, and also with knowledge, and not only having experts talking about it, really having, making it a big conversation, and understanding also the pros and the cons. There are a lot of pros. Of course, I don't think anyone wants to have skin cancer, but also let's think about the cons that go with, for instance, bioengineering the human. So I think it is a very interesting conversation that sometimes is just thought as something sci-fi and people don't even want to talk about it, thinking it is never going to happen. Is actually already happening. We have the first known human cases of humans who have been genetically modified in China in 2017. Nan and Lulu, for instance, first known genetic modified babies. So I'm not here to say that this is something, again, right or wrong. I'm here to say that we need to talk about this, because this is not the future. On some level, this is the past. So that's, again, the transhumanists do reflect about these issues. They talk extensively about it. I think they sometimes are a bit naive, just thinking that, the human is neutral and you can just... The human is not neutral. It's coming out of a history of a specific history in which some humans has been degraded as subhumans, and we need to acknowledge that in order not to repeat the same issues into the future. So to summarize, I would say that transhumanism is a very interesting movement with its own limit, but a movement that focuses on the notion of human enhancement, enhancing the human through emerging and speculative biotechnologies.
Thank you so much for that. Maybe I have one more question after that, which my researcher will just get back to you. I just want you to highlight on the growth or the stages of evolution from humanism to posthumanism.
That's a very interesting question. Yeah, so first of all, let's say that often when we're talking about humanism or we're talking about posthumanism, the discussion become a bit Western-centric. So for instance, for humanism, many people often refer to Renaissance humanism, or for instance, to the humanism that was adopted and employed through the European Enlightenment. And when we're talking about posthumanism, often people just refer to postmodernism and, for instance, a specific tradition that was developed in critical ways, but from Western academia. So I want to say that if we keep doing that, posthumanism is not posthumanism, it's a maybe Western-centric, if we're lucky. So I would like to say that humanism comes in many flavors. For instance, Confucianism is a humanism, but it's not a humanism that was developed in the Renaissance in Italy. It was developed, for instance, in China by someone that is a highly respected scholar who is Confucius. So I would like to say that it is important to really make sure that we don't always go back to a specific tradition, even just to criticize it, because otherwise it's kind of repeating the canon. Even if you go from the other side, you're still repeating the canon. So first of all, it's important to acknowledge that humanism comes in many forms. They should all be acknowledged and should all be investigated, all of them. And still so much work needs to be done on this. Not only just to dismiss it, but just to know where we come from. Because I would like to say that at one point, for instance, when we talk, for instance, about the Renaissance humanism, and I want to look at big paradigm shifts, because I see the posthuman as a large paradigm shift. It's not just involving some specific disciplines. I think that is a mindset that is changing. Now, when we're talking about humanism in all its forms, we need to acknowledge that in order to manifest, wherever we're talking, Africa or humanism or Chinese humanism, Hindu humanism, Christian humanism, Renaissance humanism, wherever you're talking about, if that manifested, it was needed. It was very much needed. For instance, the example of Renaissance humanism is that it was a passage from a theocentric society in which God was seen as separated from the human to a switch in which Renaissance philosophers were still Christian, but they acknowledge that the spark of the divine is in every creature, in every being. So now someone like Pico della Mirandola, who is known as one of the main voices of humanism, he was someone who acknowledged the divine spark of the divine in all of us. So on some level, we're all divine because we're all part of the divine creation. So I would like to say that every paradigm shift that happens means that it needs to happen. It cannot be just decontextualized. I don't like so much when people just criticize, like Confucius or Italian Renaissance or African humanism, because they are decontextualizing it. And just now, with the knowledge of now, just criticizing people who came before when there were different needs. So I think it is very important to recognize that the only thing we can do is being honest to our special temporal condition and realize that anthropocentrism or humanism no longer work for us. In that sense, for instance, I would like to say that another example is European Enlightenment that is still acknowledged by transhumanism as their roots, their trajectory, which for me is unbelievable because we are in the Anthropocene. Now, the European Enlightenment which gave birth to the Industrial Revolution, was very important at the time, because a lot of people were starving. I mean, of course, if you think about traditional agriculture, on some level was much more in balance with nature, but it also depended much more on nature. I come from a family where on my mother's side, they were peasants. And my grandmother used to tell me about her father, a strong Italian man who eventually would cry when there would be a big storm and everything would be, all the crops were destroyed. 1 year of work, everything would be destroyed by a big storm, and all of a sudden you were left with nothing. So that was a lot, and it was a lot being at the mercy of the conditions. So with the Industrial Revolution, you have a shift. All of a sudden, you kind of regulate a little more, what is produced by the machine. So I think that at the time was a change. I'm not saying it was better or worse, was a change that was needed. And my grandmother was very happy to eventually be able to go to a store and buy some pasta instead of just having no wheat because a big storm destroyed everything. So for her, we were a very lucky generation. Now, for me, again, now it's 2 generations later, I can see the damage that the Industrial Revolution has done all over the world. And, now we can expand it to, for instance, genetically modified food. And what also is happening at the agricultural level, on some level, yes, you control better, but it's creating so much damage to the environment, to biodiversity, et cetera, et cetera. So now it's our own responsibility, as Don Haraway like to say, responsibility, so the ability to respond to specific situations, saying, okay, that was the answer of previous generations. They do not longer work for us. We need a different answer. And we are the only one who can root ourselves in what's happening and reimagine and re-envision and re-manifesting what we need right now. So I think that the importance is not so much to judge history, but to understand that what maybe some people thought that could work for them no longer work for us. And we need to be honest, committed, generous, and brave enough to be able to say, this is no longer working. What can we do about this? So there are, amazing people who are doing this. And I want to say that, sometimes, on some level, transhumanism sometimes is too naive and just, seeing that everything is going to be resolved by technology, which is a very, very, very naive approach. Technology is also what created the issue to begin with about the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene is considered beginning with the Industrial Revolution because the situation, ecological distress, really started to become harder and harder. But on the other side, sometimes posthumanists are just criticizing, but not reimagining what we can do. So I think that the way is always like the middle way, I think is always the best way to be. And I think we cannot here just criticizing others. I think that we can see what doesn't work, but we have the duty to also come with possible ways to exist. So here is we can no longer just say, those are racist, or those are sexist, or those are anthropocentric. Okay, that's all fine, but what can we do? How can we do it? And if we do it with anger, that's not going to help anyone, beginning with our own. We are going to be dying with cancer with all this anger inside of us. So the idea is that acknowledging, if we don't see what's happening, if we don't acknowledge what's happening, we can never change it. So we need to be sitting and being able to acknowledge, being fully aware of what's happening, but also being fully aware that we can change it right now and that we should change it right now because that's our duty in order to, that's our existential right and existential duty, not just going on what was done before us, but also what needs to be done right now.
Thank you. So may I request Ms. Smriti to invite the research scholar, Ms.A.J.Bernita.
Yes, ma'am. Now I call upon Ms.A.J.Bernita, research scholar and assistant professor, the Research Center of English, Fatima College, to ask her questions to our guest.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Bernita.
Thank you, ma'am, for your insights on posthumanism and transhumanism. They are very much valuable for my research work. Thank you, ma'am. So my first question is, how do you perceive the future of posthumanism?
That's such a great question. And I to be sincere, after the pandemic, not that the pandemic is done, but after the beginning of the pandemic, I've been thinking a lot about specifically this question. And I realized that at first, my point with posthuman is when the pandemic first started. It started in the US before it started in India. I was supposed to come in India actually when the pandemic started, and there was March. So we started here having the issue in March, and then eventually it became, like it spread everywhere. But so I'm talking about March 2019. And I started to ask myself, when I was in the US, I could not travel. I had friends already in China and in Italy, family who were getting sick with the virus, and I could do nothing. I could just hope that they would be better. And at the time, I remember just asking myself, what am I doing? Is posthumanism helping me in this moment in any way? And I gave a lot of thought about that, and also a lot of silence. I meditated a lot in the time and read a lot of stories and a lot of books about mystics. That was the only help that the only kind of books that I was ready to read at the time. And I remember realizing that, yes, posthumanism was helping me a lot, understanding the pandemic itself. So the pandemic is not coming out of nowhere. It's coming specifically out of anthropocentric approaches, where we just go to the wildlife and eat it and kill it and destroy natural habitats. And if we don't stop that, we are going to see many more pandemics. And I'm not here to say that that's going to happen. I hope it's not going to happen. But in order not to happen, we need to change our habits right now. So after that, after realizing that, yes, posthumanism was helping me, so I was going to stick with that. I was not going to abandon the field. The next question that I asked myself, as someone who can only be fully honest to her own existence, I can only be honest to my own existence. I cannot just do something because I'm supposed to do something. I know that my life, it's as everyone else's life, it's unique. It's happening right now, and it's all I have in this moment because it's happening. So after that, I started to think, okay, what does it mean, posthumanism, through a pandemic like this? And that's where I am at the moment. I see the future of posthumanism. The only way that can really make an impact, that can really flourish, not just as a theory, is about bringing change to the way we exist, which imply everything we do, including very, very daily actions, like our food, like where we live, how we commute to work, how we talk to others, how we talk to ourselves, our fantasies, our thoughts, our dreams, everything. And I'm starting to think also if academia is enough for that, and I'm realizing that it's time to expand our field, cannot only be in academia. And my students, who are the wise ones, students, young people, they really are very receptive. They really understand posthumanism deeply once they understand what it is. And they always tell me, why do we start to study this at this age? Why we go to education and learning in very dualistic, very racist, very sexist ways? So I'm now realizing that, first of all, it's not just education, obviously, but it's all levels. Like, I think that posthumanism has to start with kindergarten and primary school and secondary school and high school, cannot just be taught in academia. That's like, I'm getting very passionate about it. Also, being a mother of a young child, I realize how many dualistic, sexist, racist ideas are already placed in young people's minds from the time they are in the belly of their mothers. Because from the time they are in the belly of their mothers, the first question the mother is getting is a she or a he? Why are we asking that question? Why does that matter? So I think that it's in order to really see changes, we need to be able to engage with all aspects of our existence. And of course, we need to train ourselves. And in this, I think we can do great work as scholars, really developing a method, because it cannot be done through anger. I am in my 40s now, and I've been part of many different political movements, activism at many different levels. And as a young person in my 20s, I was also involved in many groups that were trying to bring change. But there was also a lot of anger. I remember people being so angry about sexism or racism or ecological disasters. And I think that although I can see why we were angry or people were angry, I think that's not going to change anything. I think that in order to bring real change, the change needs to start inside of us. And in this, again, I think India brought a lot of good examples about political change. And I like, some of the message Gandhi brought to everyone, the idea that be the change you want to see. And that's how India got independence from Britain, which is incredible. I mean, through just peaceful protest and no hate or anything like that. I think it's remarkable. It's almost unimaginable in such a dualistic society, in such a dualistic history. So I think that we need to learn from, and I know that it's not perfect. I know that a lot of amazing scholars from India are writing me, asking me to talk more about casteism. So I know that casteism is a real issue in India right now. So I don't want to say that anyone is perfect or anything like that. So I'm acknowledging that India also has a lot of issues as well. But I think that there are some models that we can be inspired by. Not saying that we're perfect or anything, but they were inspiring. And they were brave to bring a different way to bring change, a different way to get independence. So I think that the way we need to change is at all levels, and it's exciting, should in no way feel like something overwhelming, can be seen as cathartic and regenerative, and has to start from the self, can only start from the self. So I think that this change is going to be, an existential change, and it's a beautiful change, and it starts with ourselves, not to judge ourselves, but being the witness of our own mind, of our own actions, of our own way we interact with others, and that we interact with ourselves. Because many times, it always is the case that the way we interact with others is the way we interact with ourselves. And people who are mean to others are people who are mean to themselves, and they are not at peace with themselves. So I would like to say that this is a deep existential path. It is beautiful and it's challenging, and it's something that we cannot do just on our own. We are doing it together. And so there is always going to be presence, and there is always going to be commitment, and there is always going to be space for dialogue. And not to say that a solution is going to work for everyone. So we like to say that in this, pluralism is very important. Perspectivism is very important. So I don't think that no one here can tell others the way to be a real posthumanist. The only way we can be a real posthumanist community is to be there for each other, to be able to listen to others, to be able to be talking with others, to share our own experiences, to share the solutions maybe that we found to specific issues, and not to judge others, but to be open as a society, as a community that is developing, that is flourishing, that is diverse, and that is inspiring, that is exciting, that is important, that is urgent, and that is needed.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful explanation. So my next question is, how much post-human are we right now? In which level of post-human are we?
That's a great question. I think that at a historical level, we have always been on some level post-human. If you think of the child, a very young child, human child, they're already post-human. They have absolutely no categories. They are everything. You ask them who they are, they just look you with a blank face. Like, they don't have a name, they don't have a gender, they don't have a race, they don't have a religion. They are everything. Everything to them is something that they acknowledge, that is on some level alive. This is why someone like Nietzsche, a very interesting philosopher, said that the overhuman, that the superhuman is the one who can reconnect to the child that is still inside of all of us. Also, if you look at many different traditions throughout the history of humanity, you see a lot of mystics and existential approaches, philosophical approaches, spiritual approaches, even religious approaches that say this, like mystics of all traditions, Christian tradition and Muslim traditions and Hindu traditions and animistic tradition, they all say the same. We are everything, like everything talks to them because everything is aware. So I would say that on some level, we already are post-human. The human is a category that can be useful. I'm not here to dismiss the usefulness of thinking also through the category of the human, because it's true that we are, for instance, sometimes placed in a situation where we are acknowledging our species connection. I'm going to give an example that is not an easy example, that is not a nice example, and that is a challenging example. I'm going to give an example, a practical example. I was in New York City after the pandemic, not after in the sense that it's ended, after in the sense that it's after it began. And all the restaurants closed and many shops had closed. So it happened that New York City has a big rat population, the rat mammals, like animals, like mice, bigger than rats. A lot of rats in New York City. But before, they had their own spots. After the pandemic, they started to go everywhere because the places where they used to get food were closed. All of a sudden, you had in buildings rat infestations, like rats getting to houses, to apartments. And I had to face that question myself. So here I am a posthumanist thinker. I do believe in the dignity of rats. They are beautiful animals, but they do reproduce very quickly. They can also bring deadly diseases as well. We can think of the example of the Black Plague back in the Middle Ages, but many other diseases are brought, maybe not necessarily to mice, but from rats, but from the fleas on them, to their saliva, the feces, etc., etc. Now, and I also had, like, talking about intraspecies connection, this moment that, I am from my window and I see one rat outside of my window. We look at each other and we had these incredible moments like, okay, I acknowledge you. But then, of course, the problem was, okay, they were getting into the buildings and they were reproducing. So what I do? So, of course, the first way is like avoiding them getting through. But the other way is like, should I use poison or not? And I must say that I thought a lot about it. And eventually I gave them warnings that space was getting, not good for them anymore. And eventually I put some poison. I didn't find anybody. So I'm very happy about that no one died that I could find. But I would like to say that it's not always easy. It's not always easy. And I say that there are challenging situations in which I am a human and now I have a species that, is highly invasive. But of course they have their right to exist. They are beautiful, they're intelligent, they are here as much as I am. And so I would like to say that it's not just, that's when theory is not enough. Theory in that situation did not help me. Yes, I want to coexist with them, but they were getting to inhabitable spaces. I have a young child. I didn't want to coexist in my apartment with them. So what I want to say here, and I'm bringing this because it's not an easy example, but I want to say that it's not always going to be an easy one. Of course, let's just all, like peace and love. That's not always the case. That's why we need to be very real about this. We need to talk about these situations. It's no longer just a theory. It's not just longer us feeling good about writing a paper and getting some people quoting us. That's not longer enough. Because when I'm going to be dying, all the quotes that I got from people, as much as I thank so much the community for recognizing my work, but it's not helping me understanding who I am in this path of coexistence. So I would like to say that, yes, we, on some level, have always been posthuman. We can be posthumanist right now, but it's not easy. But of course, it's a challenge. And it's a challenge that I cannot take it just on my own. I need to be able to discuss this with other people because some of these people maybe already have gone through some of these questions. And again, maybe their answers is not the answer that I'm going to accept or that I'm going to embrace, but does not matter. I need to be in dialogue about all of this together. And we need to be honest. We need to bring examples that are uneasy because life is not always easy. Life is not always just, like an easy path. It's not like that. And it's fine. This is our experience in this dimension. And if we don't recognize that, we are not being honest because life in this dimension, in this planet, is not just an easy walk. So I say that, yes, we can be posthumanist right now. It doesn't mean to be perfectly the perfect posthumanist or the perfect post-anthropocentric. That doesn't exist. But we can be posthumanist in being able to see issues that are real and being able to ask this question with others and being able to give the best possible answer to also practical issues.
Thank you so much for a wonderful and elaborate explanation. And I hope we are somehow post-human, right? So could you please tell us something about the cyborgs?
Yeah. So the cyborg is a very interesting concept for many different reasons. Now, of course, there is the theoretical aspect of the cyborg that has been already highlighted by so many others. So I'm just going to summarize that to go to another aspect of the cyborg that I would like to embrace and bring to everyone right now to the conversation. But the cyborg has been highlighted, the cyborg, I also like the connection, of course, to a manifesto for cyborgs by Donna Haraway. We're talking about 1985. The idea that at this point, we cannot think of humans in a possible separation from technology. And this is very true at so many different levels. Even if we think through the 21st century and where we are at, the technosphere, many humans nowadays would actually die within 2 weeks if they didn't have access to infrastructures, technologies, the food deliveries, etc., which is called the technosphere. So I would like to say that, yes, the cyborg is a notion that has been embraced for many different reasons with its own criticisms. I like the criticism, for instance, by Vandana Shiva, who says, well, that can be a very tricky notion when we're talking about GMOs, genetically modified organisms, because it means that you can just accept everything if you've always been cyborgs. So there are issues with that. But here I would like to bring another aspect of the cyborg that I think is very interesting at the existential level. I think the cyborg, and this is again, I'm quoting Donna Haraway, says, the cyborg is the genealogy that doesn't have purity, that doesn't have a beginning. If you think about it, the notion, the term cyborg itself, comes from two words. One is cybernetic, from where you get the CYB, cyb, and the other one is organism, from where you got the ORG. So cyborg is already a term that comes with a clear understanding that there is not original purity to go back to. So in that sense, it's very important when we're talking about existential honesty to realize that we can only understand fully who we are in the now. That's why it's very important to study the past. It's very important to envision the future. So of course, learning from the past, manifesting the future, envisioning the future, but it's also very important that who we are is always only in the now. And it's in the now that we can find answers to our existential queries. And it's also in the now that we can find answers to our spatio-temporal conditions. So the cyborg is giving us that message. In order to find out who you are, learn from yourself right here, right now. Get inspired by anyone who came before you. Get inspired to the people of the future. Nietzsche, for example, he was writing for the people of the future because he knew that the people of his own time could not understand him. So he wrote it very clearly that he was writing for future generations, and rightly so. He now is one of the most important philosophers of the continental tradition. But it is very important that sometimes people get caught in the past or they're getting caught in the future. And they lose the moment, they lose the source of full existential awareness. So the cyborg gives us that message that you cannot find the beginning of who you are, because the beginning of who you are is always only in the present moment. So in that sense, I like to go into a shift, existential shift to the notion of the cyborg and understanding that the real full comprehension of our own self begin in the now.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for your kind explanation. My next question is, could you please tell something about cultural posthumanism and what type of culture would you foresee in the future?
Beautiful question. Again, I'm going here also to bring something else to the conversation. I'm not going to go deeply into something that happened in the late 90s, which was specifically cultural posthumanism, although I want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge that posthumanism at the academic level started first with critical posthumanism, someone as bright as Catherine Hayes, how we became posthuman, amazing thinker of critical posthumanism, which eventually developed into cultural posthumanism, Judith Habermas, for instance, and many others, developing an understanding of posthumanism through cultural studies and also cyborg studies. That's part of the roots of philosophical posthumanism and eventually existential posthumanism. But here I'm going to take another approach. I would like to say that cultural posthumanism is something that we need to address right now. Not only as something that started and developed at the academic level in the 90s, but something that we need to manifest at the cultural level. And I want to say that most, if not all, actually can probably say all, for instance, Hollywood movies are humanistic, are anthropocentric, are dualistic, are based in old views of the human that do no longer help us. Unfortunately, those movies are still part of human consciousness, being watched by millions of people. They have an effect on people consciousness. I'm not saying awareness, because here, for instance, I'm thinking about some traditional approaches. For instance, in Advaita Vedanta, there is a distinction between awareness and consciousness. Awareness is something that is always there, is beyond space and time, and it's something that we can always go back to. It's almost like the child, to other traditions, for instance, the Nietzschean tradition. But consciousness is something that we all share as humans. Of course, there is also a planetary consciousness where we share our consciousness with many other animals and plants and technologies and so on. But we definitely share our human consciousness, which is not just individual, at the species level. Many interesting work has been done on this. For instance, Jung, the collective consciousness is an interesting point, although there are some limits to his view, but he was, like in the 20th century. But going back to cultural posthumanism, I would say that I want to bring some freshness to the movement, saying that it's not just something that happened, it's something that now we need to reinvent. Culture based on posthumanistic understanding of the human. I am now exposed to some cultural creation for young minds. For instance, Disney, all these cultural motifs that are given to children, they are so deeply humanist, so deeply sexist, so deeply racist that it's unbelievable. I think, this is 2020, and on many levels, we know that sexism is disruptive, and racism is disrupted, and anthropocentrism is disruptive, and we are still feeding those same ideas to our young children. So we are consciously or not bringing the same issues to the future. Issues that we know are poisonous, that are not healthy. So I think that at this point, we need a conscious shift of posthumanist understanding in mainstream culture. It's deeply needed. I'm not going to be the one doing that because I'm not making movies. But people who are making movies, people who are working with, for instance, medias, mainstream media, they need to update their minds, update their ideas. Because if we don't, we are going to repetitions. History, time does not necessarily bring wisdom. You can be very old and still be caught in repetition of habits that are very unhealthy for you. I know people that I deeply love who are getting old and are still fighting with each other without having time taught them anything. So time itself does not heal any wounds. Time itself does teach nothing if you don't want to learn. So we are seeing at a social level repetition of problems that we know are bad for society. So in that sense, I think that we don't want to give our young generation burdens that they don't need, because unfortunately they will have to do a lot They will have to heal the planet. We have created a lot of issues that the young people are going to have to solve if they want even to survive. They will be busy with anthropogenic issues created by the Anthropocene. I really wish that they didn't have to work also on social issues. But what I'm seeing as a mother of a young child, I see a lot of the same issues that I had to clean my background in their books, in what they are given to watch. So I am here to give a strong call to the people who are making this kind of narratives. Please stop. Please stop. Take a break. Go and take 10 days of silence and meditate on this. You are damaging the young minds. Don't do that anymore. So we all need, as a species, cultural posthumanism, not just relying on what happened 20 years ago at the academic level in academia. We need a new wave of cultural posthumanism in mainstream media. And I'm not seeing that. It's not happening yet. It's needed, much needed. So that's something that we need right now. And thank you so much for your question.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering in a very elaborate manner and a beautiful manner. So my last question is, how do you see the world in the next 20 years?
That's a beautiful question. You know, I've been thinking a lot about this. And I used to be thirsty for human knowledge and to learn all about humanity. That's why at one point in my path, as a young person, I decided that my university was going to be the planet. And I travel extensively. I volunteer, I work in different conditions, and I learn a lot about humanity. And eventually, being in many different countries, I realized that it didn't really matter where I was understanding the human in all of its varieties. And then eventually I realized through the pandemic that I needed to learn more about non-humans and being more connected to non-human environments, being as far from humans as possibly can, being connected to wildlife, seeing non-human animals looking at me, and being in the middle of nowhere with the lake and with trees and with the moon and with the stars. And I'm still now in this phase in which I'm thirsty for non-human knowledge. And yes, I think that knowledge doesn't come just from human minds. I think that knowledge is everywhere. Now, I also ask myself, am I getting into a bubble in which I'm just disconnecting from human problems and just choosing to be in a bubble? And I realize that existence, the world is not one, but many. And that, you know, there are many possible worlds in which we can be, like a forest. In the forest, there are many different trees. And eventually some trees decide that only specific trees can get to grow and get to the light. So they have all this root system in which we are sharing information to decide which trees are going to be allowed to grow into the sun, to get the energy of the sun. So I would like to say that the planet is not one, the planet is many. That sometimes that narrative in which those bad people who are doing all the damage and we are the good one who are really engaged and are against them, it's also very disruptive. I would like to say that we must know that we have full choice in our potential awareness right here, right now. That we have full choice in what we want to connect at all levels, from our thoughts to the people we connect, to the clothes we wear, to the food we eat, and that we can never feel this having no agency. You know, this is too much for me, or they took all my power. That kind of narrative is not helping anyone. And I tell you something: some of the best books have been written in prison. So even people who are in jail, everything was taken from them. They wrote the most amazing literature. Think of Martin Luther King, letter from Birmingham jail. He wrote in pieces of paper, hiding them. He was in jail. His voice was silenced, and still he wrote one of the most amazing letter of the 20th century. So I would like to say that we have always access to full awareness. That is a source. They come with us. And I know that here people are coming from more traditions. Some of you are coming from a Christian background. Think of the divine spark if you want to think for instance, to a religious background, or think to energy. We are energy. We are constantly shifting. This is a connected energy, and we cannot separate from that. We are. So I would like to say that the next 20 years, on some level, are on some level what is already happening. So full choice. But of course, if the human species go on acting like we can still behave like 200 years ago, when people in England started to fully rely on the machine as the source of income, of food, of textiles, we are going to be lost. We are going to be in deep issues that may bring us to our own extinction. Interestingly enough, at the moment, we are one of the species who is less at risk of extinction, but we have one danger, which is our own habits. It's almost like the mirror. We are looking at the mirror, and the killer is not the bad person in the bushes trying to kill you. Is yourself. Is us. We are the threat. It's not super AI. It's no longer wolves or tigers or leopards. They are getting extinct because of us. So we can no longer rely on the narrative of the bad non-human animal killing us. Is us. We are the threat. So if we want to acknowledge that, of course, we have a long way to go as a species. If we do not want to acknowledge it, we have a very short way to go as a species, and that's fine as well. There is always transformation. There is always evolution. If we get extinct because our own action, to use a term that comes from the Indian tradition, that's our own karma, and that's what we deserve. So I would like to say that we can only always do our best. So it's not for us to say, oh, because no one is doing it, then I cannot do nothing. I am here. I feel like I have no agency. No. We always have agency. We need to do our best, but we also need to do that at all levels, not only individual levels and not only the laws. We can, of course, we need to change the laws. That's very clear. Big companies, cutting down the Amazon or, deforesting India to create more factories. We don't need that. We have enough material. We have too much. Some countries have too much. I am in a situation in New York City where you cannot even donate your stuff anymore. There is too much stuff, too low quality. You cannot even donate your stuff because people don't want to that anymore. Everyone has too much. So some countries, people have too much. Some other people are still dying of malnutrition and of famine. So there is something at this balance here that we need to acknowledge when we realize that we are not just individuals, that our experience is connected and is affected by everyone here on this planet, in this dimension. It is a dimensional consciousness that we need to talk about. So I would like to say that in the next 20 years, as a species, we are going to go through big choices. If we are choosing not to be acknowledging where we really are, yes, we're going to be getting to our own end. If we want to acknowledge, then we have a long path as a species. No matter what, we should never lose hope because we always have access to the source of existential awareness. So we should never feel depressed or down because other people are not doing it. We should do it anyway. Even if the laws are not changing in the United States yet, I should always do the best I can and still make sure that those laws are getting changed. But this should not be the limit for me to just sit down and say, oh, okay, they are not doing it, so I'm just going to be eating at McDonald's and trashing the place and cutting trees because anyway people are not doing it. No, because I have my own, we are part of waves. Even a drop can change. A drop after drop after drop are creating holes in big mountains. So even a drop can make a difference. Think of mosquitoes. A tiny mosquito may not let you sleep at night, and it's a tiny mosquito. You are much bigger than a mosquito. And still a small mosquito may not allow you to sleep at night. So small things can make a difference. So I want to say that this is a call at all levels. It should be not levels that get paralyzed because other levels are not working. We are the we are. So in this 20 next years, on some level, is what's happening already now. And we need to acknowledge that there is much change to be done also at the macro levels, not only micro, also macro, but both levels need to be thought in conjunction.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for patiently answering my questions. Thank you so much for your wonderful explanation, ma'am.
You are so welcome, Bernita, and thank you so much, and Dr. Kala, for the beautiful questions that you brought to all of us to talk about post-human realities, not just theory, no longer just academia, post-human realities.
Before we wind up, I have a participant who wants to ask you some questions. Would you be able to answer him?
Of
now,
course.
over to you, Mr. Aquinas Mickey. You can now post your question. You can ask. Turn on your video, please, if you want to, and ask the question. Mr. Mickey, I think you need to turn on your mic.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Hello, ma'am. Good morning. Yeah. What's your view on, because nowadays the humans are exploring the planets outside the Earth. What's your view on that? Is it necessary at this time?
Mickey, do you mind repeating the question? Because I couldn't hear the first part. If you don't mind just repeating it one more time, the question.
Yeah. Am I audible now, ma'am? Yeah, nowadays the humans, they're exploring planets outside the Earth. Like they're exploring Moon, they're exploring the Mars. So is it necessary nowadays? So.
What a great question. Thank you so much, Mickey. I'm actually writing a paper about this, and I'm writing it as a letter to the humans, post-humans, who may come out of people moving eventually to asteroids and to non-human, to non-planet, to non-earthly planets and so on. So it's a great question. Okay, so I think that on some level, humans have always been aware that we are in the cosmos, that we are not exploring space, we are in space. If you think of all ancient societies, and I'm really talking about Paleolithic, Neolithic time, we have proof that humans have always been studying the stars, because we have always known as a species that we are in space. We are not now starting to explore space. We are in space. Great astronomical knowledge comes from all tradition. You know, I know that you are based in India. In India, there are incredible sites of astronomical knowledge that come from ancient time. But all over the world, even the megalithic, already coming from the Paleolithic time, were created in a way to actually study the stars and the planets. So on one level, I think that knowing that we are in space has always been part of human consciousness. On the other side, there is this capitalistic approach to space that is developing very recently about now that resources are ending on planet Earth, we can go and deploy other planets. For instance, going like what is called asteroid mining. So going and mine asteroids for resources, or bringing our own trash, garbage to other planets. And we are actually already polluting space through all the satellites around planet Earth that are being, all satellites, they're left there and eventually they decay and they become small parts that are surrounding us. So if you actually look at the image of planet Earth right now, is surrounded by space debris, which is human-created garbage from satellites in space. So that's a very relevant question, very important. And I would say that on some level, I think that the idea of going outside of planet Earth is part of our DNA. One of the theories actually about humans is that that we actually come from space, that the first cells were not, did not evolve on planet Earth, but came from from space. So I think that it's part of being human, knowing that we are not just on a planet, that if you look around at night, you see all the stars, and you know that those are suns surrounding the planets, and you think about the possible life that is maybe out there. It's a call that we are given every single night. And think about the sun and think about what the sun represented also to many civilizations. Egyptian civilization, the sun was God. The sun was considered the main god. So I think that there is no way we can just think, we should just stay on planet Earth because we don't belong here. We belong to the cosmos. We are cosmic beings. On the other side, I think it is very risky the way that humans are developed. Some humans are developing this approach of going to colonize the space. That's very, very risky. That's why I think that when we're talking about space exploration, we should not only give people who are going to space, like NASA Explorer, et cetera, knowledge about the science, but knowledge about a different way to look at the cosmos. Because we know, and again, India is a great example of post-colonial thinkers explain the colonialist approach are damaging. We don't want to bring to space colonialism. That's a deadly approach to the human, damaging everyone. The colonialists and the colonized both are damaged by this concept of just going and exploiting others and exploiting Earth and exploiting the moon and all these other planets. So that's very dangerous. I'm completely against that. But I'm not against the idea of humans exploring, because again, I personally would love to go and explore other planets. It's so exciting, and I can see how much is out there to be seen. And the universe is expanding. So we will get to a point where some humans will be in some possible planets. They might not even be able to come back to Earth anymore, because the universe is expanding and we are getting farther and farther from specific planets. So I think that space is there. If you like, I like very much the notion of Leela in the Hindu tradition, that this is a cosmic game, cosmic play. And so the idea is not that we are in prison on a planet or on a cosmos. Think about it. This is expanding. The universe is expanding at a scientific level. So I think that, of course, it's part of us to want to explore. But I think we really need to again, think as a species about how do we want to go to space. If we're going to this idea of, the white man grabbing more resources and destroying more planets, I'm not for that. I'm not interested. I'm not going to go with this vision. And also the way we are going is very damaging. So these missiles that are sent, they are creating so much environmental damage to the planet. The ozone hole is also created by these, for instance, spaceships that are sent in very violent way for the ozone, for the atmosphere, etc., etc. So I'm not against space exploration. I think that we need mindful people who are rethinking the way to go to space, not only in the technology. I think, again, these missiles that are sending very violence to creating holes, I think that we really need to rethink that, and all the debris that is created at the moment is going to be an issue, is already an issue. We already have every day small pieces coming down. We are going to start to see big pieces coming down and falling on people. At the moment, it's getting more to specific areas that are not inhabited, but soon may fall in New Delhi, New York, or if we keep adding garbage in space. So I would say that I'm not against that. I'm actually personally find it extremely exciting. I would love to be able to explore, and I see possible human futures in which people are actually in different planets. But one of the reasons we might go there is to bring different way of existing, different way of thinking. So there is no way we can talk to our astronauts just about science and technology, how, to fix your spaceship. Fix humankind, fix the human species and society. So we need to also have philosophical teaching and understanding of what kind of messages are we bringing to space. So if you're bringing colonialism and neoliberalism and capitalism and racism and sexism, I'm not for that. But I'm sure that there are many more people who are interested in going to space for other reasons other than deploying more resources and creating more damage. And I want to see that manifesting. So that is why it's very interesting that in the history of space exploration, if you go back to the treaties of the 70s, they are very enlightened because it was at the period of the Cold War and people didn't want to go into a atomic nuclear war because of space. So those treaties are pretty enlightened, and they talk about you cannot go and get resources, and there is no nation in space. So those treaties are very interesting. We should go back to see what was written in the 70s, and now, there is this new approach of neoliberalism about anyone can go to asteroids and deploy and take resources. I think we are at an interesting moment for bringing our voices out as posthumanists as well, and of course as a species. So why are we going to space? Do we need resources? Is that a solution, just deploy Predator to get more and more and more? For what? When we have so much already, that we have already, so much garbage. Even the second-hand market does not work anymore. Africa is getting polluted with all the clothes that are sent from the US and Australia. I was watching some documentary, unbelievable. They are getting so much of the coast and the ocean being polluted by all these garments that are not even good, and they are sent to Africa, and then they have to throw it because they are not quality. So instead of getting more resources, they think of the resources we have now. They think how we're going to use those resources, and then, yes, going to explore for different reasons than capitalism.
Yeah, thank you so much.
One last question to you, Francesca. A participant wants to know. He is Mr. Anand Aruldas from Bishop Paper College, Trichy. He wants to know if you could explain what parahuman is and how it is related to posthuman. So the response could be as brief as possible. There are a few more also. One more which I would like to club. It is how you would like to distinguish a normal person from a posthuman person. And with that, we end the question session.
Thank you so much, Kala. I'm going to start from the second one, and maybe then I'm going to ask you to repeat me the first one. That's a good question. How do you distinguish someone who is more committed to posthumanism from between a common normal person? Well, I would say it depends how you define the notion of the normal. If the notion of the normal is someone who just accept everything that is given them through the family, through society, through their, learning from different people, but doesn't really look inside of them, then I would say there is a big difference. Because what I think is at the core of, all traditions, all religious traditions, all philosophical tradition, and all scientific tradition is the question, who am I? And I think in order to answer the question, we can be inspired by our parents, our educators, our priests and shamans and whoever, but at the end of the day, the only person who can find the real answer to that is ourselves. Because we are unique beings. We are artists of existence. And an artist can only be original. Otherwise, it's not an artist. It's someone who is just imitating others. So I think that if someone is just accepting whatever they're given, like you are a female, you should behave like this. You are an untouchable, you should behave like that. You are white, you should behave like this. You are black, you should behave like that. And they just accept it. That's someone who is just accepting whatever is there and accepting all these layers of these layers that kind of eventually cover their connection to themselves, to the awareness, to the source of awareness. But if you think of the normal as just someone having a job and doing the best they can and having a religion or having a family or having, I think probably there is no difference. I think it's I would say that it's an existential commitment that doesn't go with a membership. I don't need to show the other people the membership that I am the real posthuman, because that can come also with a lot of hypocrisy. I am the real posthuman and I'm giving all these amazing talks, and then at the end of the conference, I might go to McDonald's, eat a piece of chicken and just throw the garbage, all these papers that I was given, and just feel good that a lot of people applaud me at the conference hall. I don't see that as any posthuman approach, but I'm talking about a posthumanism that is not just a theory. That's why I want to say that I'm not generalizing here for everyone. That's why it's going to be interesting to go to the first question. I'm not saying that I am the posthumanist talking for everyone, But I'm here to say that in my understanding of the posthuman, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, especially after realizing that I can die tomorrow or anyone can die tomorrow, is this ego that was happy about being applauded or that was happy about being quoted, is that ego helping me in any way navigating possible transformations? Because death, in chemistry, for instance, can only be described as a transformation. Energy doesn't just end, doesn't just die, can only transform. Now, at this level, is the quotes that I got or the applause that I got, is that helping me? Probably not. But did it help me to always going back to be fully honest and always going back to the source of myself? That, I think, is the only aspect that can help you in every situation of your life and post-life. I'm not talking about afterlife as hell or paradise or anything. Everyone can choose what they believe, but I'm talking about in strict scientific terms that energy cannot die, can only transform. So I'm here to say that there is no difference between a coma and normal person or a posthumanist person if this person is fully committing to be fully honest to themselves. They can call themselves Christian or Hindu or Muslim or feminist or not feminist, I don't care. But if they are fully honest and ready to understand what's needed and ready to understand who they are in this specific spatial temporal condition, we are on the same page. We are seeing, we are connecting at the same level. Mysticism, you are beyond the categories. You are beyond describing yourself as just this or that or that or that. You on some level are everything because you're already realizing that interconnection is you. So that I would say that, again, it depends how you define normal. And then the first question, if you don't mind, Kala, to repeat that.
Yeah, it is, the person wants to know the difference between a para-human and a post-human, if there is any. Para-human.
So to understand para-human, P-A-R-A.
Yeah, para-human.
Interesting enough, I've been hearing all kinds of different waves connected to the posthuman. Para-human, it's personally the first time I'm hearing it, so I guess it's an interesting new term that is developing, so I'm not the expert to talk about this. But I would like to say that this is going to be happening, of course. There are going to be many different levels that are going to be generating, and I'm very excited and happy about it. And every time, I've been teaching about the posthuman, and I always go through all these terms, and anti-human and meta-human and everything. I always say there are going to be many more that are going to come up. And that should be beautiful and fine because it means that we are happening. This is needed. That people need another term that maybe is not exactly what was there to describe how they perceive existence. So I'm not the one who can answer to this question, but I'm going to say that there are many more levels that are going to be generating in the next decade, and they're all welcome because they are there to say, we are here to describe something that cannot be described in what is already there. And I am also feeling that. That's why I'm now describing what I am doing as existential posthumanism. I feel that philosophical posthumanism sometimes can be seen as more like a philosophy that comes out of academia. I'm not fine with that anymore. Although philosophy, of course, if you look at the Greek etymology, it means the love for wisdom, and wisdom goes well beyond academia. But sometimes philosophy, especially when you are talking in academic circles, is seen as something that comes from specific philosophical traditions through names and dates. And no, I'm here to talk about existence. I'm here to talk about us right here, right now. So thanks again for the question. I'm not the expert to talk about this, but I'm going to say that there are many more terms that are going to develop and flourish.
Oh, thank you so much, Francesca. That was phenomenal. We are just blown out because I can vouch for it from the number of participants that are still staying on. None of them have left, and it's a day for you, but you have turned our night into a day by just speaking so much in such a vivid and a vibrant way. I'm sure that your students are too gifted. They have a wonderful teacher in you. They have an awesome philosopher and a real practitioner. We all rolled into one great human, Dr. Francesca Ferrando. And I think COVID is a blessing in disguise because the pandemic has helped us rope you in. Otherwise, I think that this must have been an unimaginable affair for us. So we are really grateful to you for being so simple in accepting our invitation and for responding to us very promptly every time I mailed you. And so it was really, really great keep relating with you. And I hope that this continues. And one day you should visit our institution also. And here at this point, I would like to gratefully remember my head of the department, Dr.A.Roselin Mary, who didn't have a Roselin education when I just said that who didn't have a Roselin education when I just said that who didn't have a Roselin Mary who has made happen this day. So I'm really grateful to Dr. A. Roselin Mary for making it a happening event here. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that. And thank you so much, Dr. Francesca Ferrando, for making it so wonderful. And we see an astounding teacher in you. We are spellbound. As I told you, you have turned our night into a day. We'll all be thinking over it, and I'm sure I'm not going to catch my sleep tonight. So, and I also would like to thank Joe Bartholomew, who is here with us. Thank you so much for joining us. So when we have a talk arranged here in campus, I think your followers or all your people who really support you, your supporters should also join us. So it's an open invitation, and I take this opportunity to thank all the participants from all over the nation and across the globe also. And very special thanks to some to the city colleges that are here who always render their support. And I would like to thank all the faculty and the students of my research department. Thank you so much. Over to you, Smriti, for the formalities.
One sec, Kala.
Yes, ma'am.
Personally, I would like to thank Dr. Ferrando for such an exhaustive and extensive deliberation on post-humanism. And it covered everything under post-humanism. And I'm sure it has inspired so many researchers to take up this field. It's an exhaustive field of study. And definitely, I think many would take it. Thank you very much, Dr. Francesca Ferrando.
Thank you so much, Roselin. Thank you so much, Kala. Thank you so much, Fatima College. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here together and think about this together and be in dialogue and open. And it's been an extremely joyful and delightful moment. And I think that, yeah, it's true. Like, because of the pandemic, we are connecting more and more, and we're really understanding that we can do it together. And there's been such an incredible dialogue with all of you. I deeply thank you so much for your work.
On behalf of the Research Center for English, I extend a warm welcome to visit the campus soon. Hope to have more.
It will be amazing.
Yeah, academic.
It will be amazing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Over to you, Smriti.
Yes. So I officially invite Ms.A.J.Bernita to deliver the vote of thanks.
The Lord is my strength and my shield. In Him my heart rests. And I'm helped. My heart exults with my song. I give thanks to Him. Psalms 28:7. With the Lord beside us and loving care all around us, I take this opportunity to thank everyone who have been the part of this program. At the outset, I submit my thanks to our Lord Almighty for showering His abundant blessing in the organization and the conduct of the program. Next, I would like to thank our management, especially our ever-loving secretary, Sister M. Francesca Flora, and Principal, Dr.Sr.G.Celine Mary, for being a great source of courage and support in all our endeavors. I take this opportunity to thank all the vice principals who motivate us to take different steps in enhancing the quality of education. Next, I profusely thank our chief guest of the day, Dr. Francesca Ferrando. Thank you, dear ma'am, for graciously accepting our invitation and sharing your insightful views on post-human reality. It was in
Thank you so much, Bernita, and thank you so much, everyone, and also Smiruti for the beautiful questions. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank Mr. Joe Bartholomew for your kind presence and your observations. Thank you, sir, for being with us. I wholeheartedly thank my research guide and supervisor, Dr.S.J.Kala, for creating such an arena for me to delve deeper into my research. Thank you, ma'am. It has been a great forum for me as well as many researchers like me to expand our knowledge on posthumanism. Thank you so much, ma'am. Without you, this event wouldn't have been possible. Thank you once again, ma'am. I dearly thank Dr.A.Roselin Mary, Head the Research Center of English, for giving us the space to conduct this program. Thank you, ma'am, for supporting us. I also extend my sincere thanks to all my teachers and colleagues of the department for their contributions towards the event. Next, I lovingly thank my fellow researchers for their constant support and encouragement throughout my research activities. A big hearty thanks to all the dear participants and students for enrolling and attending the meeting. Thank you so much, one and all. Once again, I thank one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you so much.
Hope to see you in person.
Me too, me too. The beginning, this is only the beginning. Thank you so much. A wonderful, blessed evening, night in India. Yeah, here is still day, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you, Smriti. Thank you so much for that MC. Thank you. Thank you.